Greetings. I wanted to make a video trying to put everything together and then looking to the future as it relates to mental disorders and crime. We've covered a lot of material throughout the semester, and you all have provided some excellent papers on a variety of topics. I think one of the real nice features of the online course is that you were able to post all of your papers and your colleagues were able to read the papers. Thus, a wealth of knowledge was obtained in addition to the readings and other online materials. And so we saw, for example, that we certainly learned a lot about the relationship between crime and specific disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, antisocial personality disorder, conduct disorder, depression, substance use disorders, and the like. And we also learned about some of the problems that exist in, first of all, in preventing these problems from occurring in the first place, preventative measures and programs. And we also looked at treatment and follow-up and some of the problems related to lack of adequate services. Funding always seems to be a problem. I can tell you that for me, the whole system is like a jar of molasses. I mean, moving that slowly. If you tipped over a jar of molasses, and my wife told me not to demonstrate this in the kitchen and to go outside if I was going to make a mess, so I won't. But that molasses just barely comes out of the bottle, or ketchup even. If you try to get ketchup out of the bottle, it just seems like it takes forever and it just moves. To me, that's an analogy or a metaphor for the criminal justice system and the mental health system combined. It's just a clogged jar of ketchup or molasses. It just moves slow, and that can be very frustrating, especially when others in the field are trying to innovate and set up programs and change programs that have been proven not to work over and over. We also saw that there are programs and things that we still do that have been shown from the empirical evidence, the literature, the research, not to work, and that's frustrating as well. So we've also seen that the media has really done a number on presenting many myths about mental disorders and crime. One that we're seeing right now as I make this particular video is that there seems to be this huge link, this strong link between post-traumatic stress disorder and violence. And even in some cases, that if a person commits a crime, a violent crime, and they have some diagnosed mental disorders, and it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, the press and some of the people on television almost look for it or try to construct, well, it must be there it must have been missed, and that's not necessarily the case. As we see, the vast majority of those with mental disorders do not engage in violent behavior. But we're still stuck with the problem on how to effectively evaluate and treat mental disorders that co-occur with criminal activity. And of course, the politics gets into that as well. Having worked in the field of intervening and understanding, researching sex crimes, I can tell you that it's loaded with political fallouts and conflicts. And even if you have some research, if it goes a different way than what the public would want, or politicians want, you're going to run into a lot of trouble and problems. So we might ask, are we spending our money effectively and efficiently on programs? We might also ask if our educational system has not provided the adequate tools for addressing mental disorders early on. And do our community resources, are our community resources there to address mental disorders? And there's a lot of changes with new modes of therapeutic care, medical care, psychiatric care, mental health care, and the like. And certainly at this point it's way too soon to make any judgment or evaluation on whether things have gotten better, stayed the same, or gotten worse, or what parts have gotten better or not. And I think it's real important to keep the science going and to keep the research going. Another thing I think we're seeing clearly is the biological model, the medical model, is really becoming more popular again. And this time I think it's starting to stick in the public's mind with fancy MRIs and brain scans and neat, colorful pictures of people's brains and the attempt to associate structure and function of brain with certain types of behaviors has really taken off. But at this point in time, it's really in the exploratory stage, and it's really too soon to make any conclusions at all. And I think another issue that we have to address is the future. I mean, situations have occurred, especially as it relates to technology, where the law is way, way, way behind. For example, I just took a course the other day, an online course on understanding and intervening in cases of online stalking. And it wasn't a lot of new material since I teach a lot about that. But I thought, wow, this would have been something so useful, maybe 15 years ago. But now it's becoming more popular and people are learning about it. Bullying online, for example. And so it seems that often we're always catching up. We're saying, oh no, there's a problem. We're putting out all these little fires, and then we're trying to figure out what to do to prevent more. But it seems like we have this lag, and that's problematic. So thinking about the future, that there's a lot of things that could happen. Some of that's related to the political climate, obviously, that the politicians deciding and lawmakers deciding what types of laws to change or to implement and what types of criminal justice policies are used. We also see some demographic changes. Certainly, one thing I think you're going to hear in the future a lot more would be when some type of criminal behavior may be explained from someone's dementia, for example, that wasn't caught early on. Because I think with an aging population, we're going to see a lot more Alzheimer's disease, we're going to see a lot more dementia, and we're going to see people engaging in behavior that would be judged as illegal, although they probably will not be responsible for that behavior due to cognitive impairments. But I mean, I don't think we hear a lot about that. I think a lot of that's treated or dealt with internally, and law enforcement doesn't get involved that much unless it's a real serious violent crime. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we're going to see a lot more of the pharmaceutical industry try to come up with really specific medications that target certain receptors that would possibly change or decrease certain symptoms of what is defined as problematic or a mental disorder. I think we're going to see more advances in treating addictions with drugs, with medications, with pharmaceuticals that block certain parts of the brain so that the ingestion of a drug would not have an effect. I know the old models of antabuse, where someone would take this pill, and then if they drink any alcohol, they'd throw up and get real sick. And the idea was that that either they just wouldn't drink because they were so fearful of the explanations given on what happens if you drink, or they drink and then they get really sick and say, well, I'm not going to do that again. And I think we're going to see that model advance in a much more sophisticated and complex ways. Again, the brain scanning is going to continue. It's going to become probably more advanced, and interpretations are going to change as well. And we're going to see probably some changes also related to how our economic system is operating. We'll probably see more international exchange of ideas, and hopefully we'll also see more scientific evaluations of programs and interventions. And I think in some ways we'll also see the merging of different perspectives. That certainly, you might treat a substance use disorder with a medication, but the person still may have other comorbid issues. The person may, I remember when I worked in the field, I'd get some substance use situations, substance abuse disorders, and I was not treating substance abuse in the clinic that I worked at, and I would refer them usually to, at that time, a 30-day inpatient program. I'd refer them, and they'd come back 32 days later to see me, and they'd say, "Mark, I'm not using drugs anymore, but now I'm depressed, and I wasn't depressed before. It's your fault. You got me clean off the drugs, and now I'm depressed. So now what?" And the whole idea was maybe the medications were self-treating the depression. That was missed maybe in the program, or something that came up that now was masked, and so now we have to address that. That's going to be more common. Comorbidity is the theme. And again, I think we see the expansion of mental disorders. People are shocked when they see that caffeine is in the DSM, and that's what I'm drinking now. Actually, this is decaf, I think. But I'd like my general practitioner to write me a prescription for a 30-day supply of Starbucks and let insurance pay for it. I mean, after all, it's in the DSM. I asked my physician, I said, "Do you think you can write me a script for Starbucks?" And he looked at me as if I was making a joke, which of course I was, but you can kind of see the idea here. And that shows you, well, of course we're not going to have insurance companies reimbursing for Starbucks gift cards because someone may have a dependence or some issues with caffeine. And of course we don't hear about people committing crimes due to caffeine intake. So we're going to see that, what's going on with marijuana, the medical use of marijuana, or simply decriminalization of marijuana, and how will that change? Will we see that have any effect at all? Will it reduce people that are in prisons? Will it have, will it increase the use? Will, it stay the same? So there's always a lot of questions, and monitoring is very important as well. We have a lot of sophisticated tools to gauge what's going on. And it's important for researchers to be able to study what is going on. I can tell you it's very difficult if you want to study, for example, high school students. You have to go through all kinds of roadblocks, if you will, and brick walls to get to study that population, unless you're working in clinical settings where the population's already there. But you may not want clinical population that that if you go to do your research at a clinic, you can do some interesting research certainly, but you can't generalize to the population. That's important to do. Same thing with the prisons. You can go into the prisons and do all kinds of research, but you can't generalize outside of that particular prison setting. And so I think we need to also see more sophisticated research tech strategies and plans get funded as well. So I want you to think about the future. One of my favorite magazines is The Futurist. I've been reading this magazine for years, and it always is filled with some interesting features. For example, this is the May-June 2014 issue. I just got it, I haven't read it yet. Here we got on page 6, Good Robots Gone Bad. 3D printing keeps growing on page 11. It has article on innovation, and then it has a whole series of articles. Where will the century of biology lead us? And what will medicine look like? So it has all kinds of adventures in personal genomics. And I think that it's really relevant to take a close look. This is also pretty good. I like to read this, Scientific American Mind. It has some nice summaries of some research, and then you can look at articles in the journals, the original research if you want. And this one's on the science of memory, 7 amazing illusions that fool your brain, a new theory of consciousness, stem cells for Parkinson's, cameras that work like eyes. and this is the May June 2014 issue. And I think we're seeing a lot more science get out there to the general public, and that's important. Of course, we need to be careful that it's represented in a clear and fair manner. So think about the future. When you write about the future in terms of what you think is going to happen with mental disorders and crime, there's really no wrong answer, is there? There's different scenarios, different predictions, different if this then that, and all kinds of things that can throw a curve or change things if something specific was to occur or some particular scientific finding change the ways that we conduct our science and our practice. So think about the future, and I think that that's a good place to really wrap things up. That this course kind of was a whole introduction to the field, and now you realize there's just so much in a vast area to cover, and that you can start specializing in particular areas. And I think that's what some of you already started to do in really getting some good knowledge about some specific disorders, how they're treated, how it relates to criminal justice, how it's dealt with in the criminal justice system. So one student always said that whenever I said in summary, you could expect class to be over in 30 minutes. But now that I'm online and making these YouTube videos and I've run out of time, I'll just say in summary, it's going to be a wild ride. Thank you.